On a frosty Christmas Eve, just as the world around them sparkled with holiday lights and promise, Nicholas Hamilton walked out of his penthouse door, leaving his pregnant wife Eliza devastated and alone. In a single hour, her world shattered. Little did she know that by morning, her face would be on every news channel across the country. What happened that night would send shockwaves through the media, and their once loving marriage, revealing a labyrinth of hidden secrets, half-truths, and alliances so dark that even Nick, the man at the heart of it all, never imagined they'd see the light of day. Nicholas Hamilton was born into a life most people only dream about. His father, Charles Hamilton III, ran a prestigious financial conglomerate, Hamilton Global Holdings, with connections to old Wall Street families and foreign royalty. His mother, Beatrice Hamilton, came from a line of art collectors in Europe. By the time Nick was 5, he had already visited more countries than the average person would see in a lifetime. Summers were spent at a private villa in Lake Como, winters at a family estate in Switzerland. His friends joked that Hamilton was synonymous with privilege. But with privilege often came the expectation of perfection. Nick was groomed to follow in the Hamilton lineage from a young age, finishing top of his class at Phillips Exeter Academy, then breezing through Harvard with a degree in economics. He was brilliant, daring, and undeniably charismatic. Investors found him charming at 23. Board members found him wise beyond his years at 24. By the time he was 27, Nick had garnered his first Fortune magazine cover for youngest hedge fund prodigy to make $1 billion. He basked in it. He reveled in the accolades in the press and in the power he held over markets. Yet behind the carefully tailored suits and the opulent parties like the annual Hamilton Charity Ball at the Plaza, Nick carried a hollowness he could never quite shake. The constant pressure to outdo himself, to exceed the lofty bar set by his parents, and the relentless scrutiny of the media weighed on him like an anchor. And then came Eliza. Eliza Jordan was the kind of woman no one would ever guess would end up with a billionaire. She hailed from a modest background in upstate New York, her parents running a small diner famous for its apple pie. Eliza grew up working behind the counter, greeting travelers off Interstate 90 and listening to their stories. She developed an open, warm demeanor and an empathetic heart. After college, she dreamed of moving to Manhattan and becoming an investigative journalist. She idolized Christiane Amanpour and Anderson Cooper, determined to make her mark. But big breaks are hard to come by. She spent months pitching stories to local stations, blogging on the side, and occasionally freelancing for small publications. Her first real job in the city, ironically, had nothing to do with journalism. She became a research assistant for a non-profit legal firm investigating corporate malfeasance. One grey November afternoon, she found herself in the middle of a high-profile press conference. A whistleblower was about to expose an executive's dubious dealings, and the press had gathered in droves. It was there that Eliza first crossed paths with Nick Hamilton. He wasn't implicated in the scandal. In fact, his philanthropic foundation was partially funding the non-profit she worked for. He arrived impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, carrying an air of confidence that made every head turn. Eliza, holding a thick binder of legal documents, nearly bumped into him as she rushed to hand over some last-minute notes to her boss. "Careful," Nick said gently as papers flew everywhere. "We wouldn't want to compromise your hard work." She looked up, cheeks flushing. I'm so sorry," Nick knelt, helping her collect the documents. Their eyes locked for only a second, but in that moment, the thrumming chaos of the press conference faded to a dull roar. Nick Hamilton, with all his grandeur, was kneeling on the floor, picking up papers for a woman he'd never met. He smirked. "Looks like you're the only person here more anxious than I am." Eliza laughed, nerves loosening. "This is my first big press event. I'd hate to drop the ball." When Nick handed her the final stack of papers, their fingertips grazed. In that fleeting touch, Eliza felt something shift within her. For Nick, it was as if he'd found something honest in a world too often painted in shades of pretense. Their relationship blossomed faster than either expected. Nick was used to women who were impressed by his money, who saw him as a golden ticket to an elite lifestyle. He'd grown wary of that brand of attention. But Eliza was different. Warm, unpretentious, and passionately curious about the world. She was initially skeptical. Men like Nick often wore masks. But after a few dinners, early morning coffees near her modest apartment in Queens, and a few philanthropic events they attended together, she realized how genuine his empathy was. When Nick talked about philanthropic projects like funding medical clinics in rural Peru, Eliza's eyes lit up. She asked deeper questions about the people his foundation served, the cultures, and the structural problems that led to inequality. Nick found himself confiding in her. He spoke of the pressure his family placed on him, the exhaustion that came from constantly performing, constantly being the perfect Hamilton heir. Eliza listened, never judging, never rushing to offer hollow solutions. She made him feel seen, not as the billionaire mogul, but as a flawed human being who just wanted to find meaning. Slowly, their weekends became getaways from the crowded Manhattan scene to quiet corners of the Adirondacks. Nick taught her to ski. She taught him how to cook basic meals, and they binge-watched documentaries about journalism heroes. Despite coming from different worlds, they fit perfectly, each rounding out the other's vulnerabilities. One spring evening, 6 months after their first meeting, Nick proposed. It wasn't at some grand gala or a glamorous trip to Paris. He did it in her tiny kitchen in Queens Flower, dusting his cufflinks because they'd just attempted to bake a pizza from scratch. Eliza cried tears of joy, whispering yes through her sobs. The wedding was a whirlwind. The Hamilton name demanded a level of pomp and ceremony. The tabloids ate up every detail. Eliza initially wanted a small, simple affair, but Nick's parents insisted on hosting it at the Hamilton family estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, a sprawling manor that had hosted senators, tech moguls, and even European nobility on occasion. A sea of paparazzi camped outside the estate gates, hoping to snap photos of the commoner bride who had captured the heart of the heir. Celebrity friends of the Hamiltons attended, including business magnates like Bill Gates and well-known figures like Oprah Winfrey, who happened to admire the Hamilton Foundation's philanthropic efforts. Even Elon Musk was rumored to have sent a personal note of congratulations, referencing a conversation he'd had with Nick about future humanitarian projects on Mars, half joke, half serious in Musk's typical fashion. Eliza felt swept away by the spectacle. As she walked down the aisle, it was hard not to be overwhelmed by the cameras and the crowd. Still, when she locked eyes with Nick at the altar, everything else fell away. In that moment, it was just them. They kissed amid applause, and the newly christened Mrs. Eliza Hamilton tried not to think about the mountain of expectations that came with her new last name. The first year of marriage was blissful, filled with philanthropic trips and adjusting to a new home, a luxurious but surprisingly cozy penthouse overlooking Central Park. Eliza settled into the role of philanthropic advisor, working with Nick's foundation to evaluate projects and travel to underfunded communities. Yet beneath the veneer of happiness, tension brewed. Nick's father, Charles Hamilton III, had never fully embraced Eliza. Though he was polite, there was an undercurrent of disapproval in every question he asked about her background, her career aspirations, her ability to handle the social demands of being a Hamilton. Beatrice Hamilton was more welcoming, but she too had her reservations, always measuring Eliza against an invisible, impossibly high standard. The tabloids didn't help. They followed Eliza relentlessly, scouring her small-town past for anything unsavory. They spun half-truths into headlines like "Small-Town Girl in Over Her Head" and "Hamilton Bride Ambition" or "Love." Nick tried to shield her, but every magazine cover was another reminder that her every move was being dissected. Despite these pressures, Nick and Eliza tried to keep their relationship strong. They'd have weekly date nights away from prying eyes, sometimes sneaking into a hole-in-the-wall restaurant in the Bronx, other times strolling through Riverside Park, disguised in baseball caps. But as Nick's responsibilities at Hamilton Global Holdings grew, so did the demands on his time. Late-night strategy sessions, flights to Hong Kong, endless phone calls with investors. Eliza found herself alone in a penthouse full of staff. She barely knew her attempts at philanthropic projects, overshadowed by the press's fascination with her personal life. After 2 years of navigating high society philanthropic travels and the unrelenting scrutiny of the media, Eliza discovered she was pregnant. She told Nick early one morning, surprising him with a tiny pair of baby booties she'd bought at a local boutique. Nick's face lit up. He scooped her into his arms, promising to scale back his work to be a present, loving father. For a while, Nick tried to make good on that promise. He turned down some late-night meetings, delegated more tasks to his trusted friend and CFO Joshua Pierce. Eliza, radiant and hopeful, started imagining their future as a family. She even pictured moving to a quieter brownstone in Brooklyn, where a child could grow up with parks and a sense of neighborhood. Then reality intruded. A major deal was brewing at Hamilton Global Holdings, one that involved a merger with a European bank partially owned by a Middle Eastern sovereign fund. It was complicated, volatile, and could catapult the Hamilton empire into a new stratosphere if handled correctly. Charles Hamilton III insisted Nick oversee negotiations personally. Nick's calendar filled once again. Eliza tried to be understanding, but each day she felt more like a bystander than a wife. When she brought up her concerns, Nick would reassure her. "Just a little longer, Eliza. After this, we'll take that long vacation to the Maldives, away from everything." Still, the baby grew inside her, and with it a gnawing uncertainty about their direction. As December arrived, New York transformed into a wonderland of sparkling lights and holiday cheer. The Hamilton family was expected to spend Christmas Eve at the Connecticut estate. Eliza, now nearly 7 months pregnant, wanted nothing more than a cozy celebration with Nick, her parents who planned to drive down from upstate, and maybe a few close friends. But the Hamiltons had a tradition, a lavish Christmas Eve ball that served as a fundraiser for their foundation. Politicians, celebrities, and Fortune 500 CEOs were all on the invite list. Charles and Beatrice pressed for Eliza to attend to show that the future mother of the Hamilton heir supported the family's philanthropic legacy. Nick was torn. On the one hand, he knew Eliza was exhausted physically and emotionally. On the other, the ball was a chance to seal deals and glean more support for the upcoming merger. He assured her it would be less formal than usual, that she could just make a brief appearance, wave hello, and retire early. Eliza reluctantly agreed. She chose a simple emerald gown that accentuated her baby bump, hoping to avoid the flamboyance that usually came with Hamilton events. The stage was set for a night that would change everything. On Christmas Eve, the Hamilton estate bustled with staff in black uniforms, preparing canapes and setting tables with fine china. A string quartet played softly, while guests arrived in limousines and expensive cars. The media lingered beyond the tall iron gates, waiting for glimpses of the glamorous soiree. Eliza arrived with Nick stepping out of their Bentley to the pop of flash photography. Nick placed a protective hand on her back, guiding her inside. The mansion was festooned with glittering Christmas trees, each meticulously decorated in a different holiday theme. Inside the who's who of society mingled CEOs from Fortune 500 companies, foreign dignitaries, and celebrities. Eliza felt the subtle glances at her growing belly, heard the whispered remarks about the next Hamilton generation. She tried to keep her head up, reminding herself it was for a good cause. Nick left her side to speak with a group of European bankers. Eliza found herself adrift, heading to the open terrace for some fresh air. There she found Joshua Pierce, Nick's longtime friend and CFO, sipping a glass of champagne. "Josh," she greeted him. "Nick is working again, I see." He offered a sympathetic smile. "I tried to convince him to dial it down for tonight, but you know how he is, especially with the merger negotiations at such a delicate stage." Eliza's shoulders sagged. "I just wish we could have one night of normalcy." Before Joshua could respond, a hush fell over the terrace. Charles Hamilton III emerged with a small entourage. He beckoned Eliza closer. "We need you and Nick inside for a photo with the board members. It's important for the Hamilton image." Fighting the urge to roll her eyes, Eliza followed. She stood by Nick, plastering on a polite smile, while cameras flashed. Beyond the lenses, she spotted her parents looking overwhelmed and somewhat lost among the crowd. Her heart ached. She wanted to go to them to share a moment of normal Christmas cheer. But in an instant, Nick was pulled away again, this time by a group of donors from Dubai. Eliza was about to follow when a sudden wave of dizziness overtook her. She hadn't eaten much all day, and her pregnancy made her more prone to fatigue. She steadied herself on a nearby chair, blinking away black spots. Just then she heard it, a muffled but heated argument emanating from behind one of the closed doors leading to Charles Hamilton's study. She recognized Nick's voice, tense and furious. Another voice retorted, "Charles Hamilton." Against her better judgment, Eliza moved closer to the door. She heard fragments. "Not your puppet, the legacy bad time. The baby, my decision." Each snippet ratcheted up her alarm. Suddenly the door swung open. Nick stood there, face flushed, eyes wild with anger. His father was behind him, cold rage emanating from his typically composed features. Nick's gaze flicked to Eliza. "We're leaving," he said, voice trembling. He grabbed her hand and stormed through the corridor out of the mansion, ignoring the startled glances of guests. Eliza followed, stumbling in her heels, her pregnant belly making swift movement awkward. Outside, their Bentley driver scrambled to open the door, but Nick waved him off. He pressed a button on his key fob, and the car's engine roared to life. They sped off the estate grounds, Christmas lights receding in the rearview mirror. For several minutes, Nick said nothing, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Eliza finally mustered the courage to ask Nick what happened. He exhaled a shaky breath. I can't keep doing this. My father is pushing me toward decisions that threaten everything I've built. He wants me to sacrifice our personal life for the good of the Hamilton name. It's always about the legacy. Always." Eliza swallowed. "But what does that mean for us?" Nick glanced at her eyes darting from her belly to her face. I don't know anymore. They drove in silence back to the penthouse. Nick barely spoke as they entered their lavish penthouse. Christmas decorations twinkled in the foyer, gold ornaments on a towering tree, wreaths on marble pillars, and the faint scent of cinnamon from scented candles. It felt eerily disconnected from the tension swirling in the air. Eliza tried to confront him gently. Nick, talk to me. He turned abruptly, his eyes filled with a turmoil she had never seen before. I can't. God, Eliza, everything is caving in on me. The merger my father's demands the board. And now the baby. Her heart clenched. What do you mean, and now the baby? We both wanted this child. He raked a hand through his hair. Yes, I did. I do. But everything is crashing down all at once. My father is threatening to revoke my position if I don't follow his plan. The press is hounding us. I can't breathe, Eliza. Tears welled in her eyes. So what, you're going to run away from me? From us? He paced across the marble floor. I need space. I can't think straight. I've never felt so trapped. A wave of pain, not physical, but emotional, coursed through her. She lowered herself onto a sofa, trying not to sob. I'm 7 months pregnant, and you're talking about needing space, Nick. We're supposed to be a team. He grabbed his coat and keys. I'm sorry, he whispered, but I can't be here tonight. I just need to clear my head. Panic seized her. Nick, it's Christmas Eve. Nick's expression was torn, but his voice was resolute. I'll call you tomorrow. I promise. I need this. And before she could say another word, he walked out of the penthouse. The door closed with a heavy thud that echoed through the silent rooms. Eliza found herself alone, disbelief turning to shock. She sat there staring at the Christmas tree lights, flickering like distant stars. The baby moved inside her belly, a cruel reminder that she was not alone, but also a reminder that her husband had just left her on Christmas Eve. She tried calling him, no answer. She tried texting, no response. Christmas carols played softly on the home's integrated speaker system, an unwanted soundtrack to her heartbreak. She thought about calling her parents, but she couldn't bear to ruin their night. They were still at the Hamilton estate, likely feeling out of place. She didn't want them driving back in the dark on icy roads, just because of Nick's meltdown. Eliza paced the penthouse stairs, streaking her cheeks, until exhaustion took over in the early hours of the morning. She finally fell into a fitful sleep, the TV in the living room still glowing with late-night talk shows and replays of holiday specials. When Eliza woke around dawn, a sense of dread still clung to her torso. She padded into the living room, searching for any sign of Nick's return. The sofa was empty, the penthouse silent. Feeling restless, she turned on the news. Initially, it was just background noise, holiday segments, weather reports, traffic updates. Then something caught her eye on the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Breaking Hamilton family drama. Her stomach tightened. She turned up the volume. The anchor spoke in a grave tone. In an unexpected twist. This Christmas morning, shocking events have unfolded around the Hamilton family empire. Reports indicate that Nicholas Hamilton, heir to Hamilton Global Holdings, has left his pregnant wife, Eliza Hamilton, and is currently unaccounted for. We have unconfirmed details suggesting a possible connection to the highly anticipated European merger. Stay tuned. Eliza's mouth went dry. Her phone began to vibrate with incoming calls and texts. She switched to another channel, the same story, more speculation. A photo of her taken at the Christmas Eve ball filled the screen. The words, "Where is Nicholas Hamilton?" scrawled beneath. Panic consumed her. Why was the media reporting this so quickly? Why were they implicating her in the same breath as the merger? She attempted to call Nick again, straight to voicemail. Within minutes, the doorman of her building called up. "Mrs. Hamilton, we have half a dozen reporters in the lobby. They want a statement. Shall I call security?" Eliza's heart pounded. She felt cornered, confused. She had no idea what was happening or why it was happening so fast. All she knew was that her husband had walked out on Christmas Eve, and now the world seemed to know and wanted answers. She needed help. In a panic, she dialed Joshua Pierce. His line rang 4 times before he answered in a groggy voice. "Eliza, what time is it?" She explained the situation, voice trembling. "The news channels are talking about me, about Nick, and about some scandal with the merger. Josh." "I'm scared," he cursed under his breath. "I just woke up to a flurry of messages too. Listen, I'll come over. Don't say anything to the press until I get there. Keep your doors locked. If Nick calls, let me know." Within half an hour, Joshua arrived looking as rattled as she felt. He wore a hastily thrown-on sweater and jeans, not his usual immaculate suit. Outside, Eliza could see camera crews gathering on the sidewalk. "I've been trying to reach Nick too," Joshua said, after hugging her gently. "No luck. This rumor about him disappearing and leaving you on Christmas Eve, well, it's half true, I guess. The media's spinning it as a meltdown tied to the merger. They're also claiming you might have threatened to expose some of Hamilton Global's internal dealings." Eliza's eyes widened. "What? That's absurd. I've never done anything like that." Joshua grimaced. "I know, but gossip feeds on confusion. People smell blood in the water. Charles Hamilton must be in damage control mode. They probably want you to keep quiet." She felt a fresh wave of anger and hurt. Nick promised he'd come back. Now he's not answering. And I'm the one under the microscope. "Let's see if we can get to the bottom of this," Joshua said, pulling out his laptop. "We'll try to contact the Hamilton PR team, figure out the real story." Over the next several hours, the media frenzy intensified. Shots of Eliza's face from the night before, a tearful expression as she left the estate, were plastered on news networks and gossip websites. Speculation ran wild. Did Nick leave because he feared fatherhood? Were there financial irregularities about to be exposed? Was Eliza blackmailing the Hamiltons? The speculation about blackmail stung the most. Eliza had never sought money or influence from Nick. She'd always tried to be independent, even after marrying into wealth. As the day wore on, Joshua managed to speak with the Hamilton PR director. He relayed their statement to Eliza. "They're denying all blackmail rumors, but they're also not clarifying why Nick left. They just say he's taking personal time. They want you to do the same, and to avoid contact with the media." Eliza shook her head in disbelief. "How can they leave me hanging like this? I'm the one left alone on Christmas, and they want me to go silent." Joshua patted her shoulder. "I don't like it either. But they're probably scared. This merger is huge, and any sign of instability might kill the deal." She pressed a hand to her baby bump, feeling a reassuring kick. "What about me? What if something happens? This stress can't be good for the baby." His eyes softened. "I know. That's why I'm here. We'll figure out a way to protect you. Maybe you should reach out to your parents. Have them come here." Eliza nodded, tears threatening again. "Yes. I need them right now." Later that afternoon, while Joshua took calls in another room, Eliza scrolled through her phone. She noticed an email with the subject line, "You need to see this." The sender was unknown, a cryptic address. She opened it hesitantly. Attached was a PDF labeled Hamilton Merger Confidential. Her heart raced. She tapped it, revealing pages of financial documents, email transcripts, and legal correspondences. It looked like evidence of wrongdoing internal communications that suggested Hamilton Global Holdings and its potential partners were engaged in questionable practices. Some lines mentioned bribes to foreign officials, others indicated accounts in offshore tax havens. Eliza's mind spun. Was this real? Who sent it, and why send it to her? She scrolled further and found references to Nick's involvement. It seemed he might have discovered these shady dealings and was resisting them. If he refused, his father's entire plan for the merger could collapse. Could this be why Nick had stormed out? Was he being blackmailed by his own father to keep quiet, to finalize the merger? Despite potential illegalities, Eliza felt sick. If this information was legitimate, it explained the swirling rumors. Perhaps Charles Hamilton suspected Eliza would blow the whistle given her background in non-profit legal work and her investigative streak. Just as Eliza was about to show Joshua the documents, her phone rang. The caller ID displayed Charles Hamilton III. Anxiety flared in her chest, but she answered. Charles's voice was controlled but cold. "Eliza, I'd advise you not to speak to the press. The situation is delicate. We wouldn't want you to misrepresent the family." Eliza's frustration boiled. "I haven't said a thing. But maybe you can tell me where Nick is." He paused. "Nick is taking time to reconsider his position. That's all you need to know. As for you, I suggest you refrain from meddling in matters that don't concern you." Anger surged. "Excuse me, I'm his wife. This concerns me and I'm carrying his child." Charles's voice took on a menacing edge. "And that is precisely why I'm telling you to tread carefully. The Hamilton name carries weight enough to protect or to destroy." "Good day, Eliza." The line went dead. Eliza's hands shook. She had never liked or trusted Charles, but to hear him threaten her so openly. She knew now the documents in her inbox were the key to everything. She showed the files to Joshua, who read them with horror etched on his face. If these are real, then Hamilton Global is on the brink of committing massive fraud. This would ruin the company if it became public. Eliza was adamant. "We have to find Nick. If he's the one standing against these dealings, he could be in real danger." Joshua dialed Nick's number again. No response. He tried mutual friends, colleagues, but no one had heard from him since the night before. Eliza mulled over her options. She had enough journalistic instinct to know that handing these documents directly to the media would create a firestorm and might endanger Nick if he was somehow caught in the crosshairs. But doing nothing felt like a betrayal of all she believed in. She made a decision. "I'm going to contact an investigative journalist I trust, not to publish yet, but to verify if these documents are genuine." Joshua nodded slowly. "Okay. We'll need to keep a low profile. The Hamilton family's PR machine will be out for blood if they suspect you're behind this leak." Eliza steeled herself, determination replacing her fear. "I won't let them bully me." Not this time. The day wore on. News trucks lined the street below the penthouse, and the media demanded a statement. The speculation grew wilder. Some tabloids claimed Nick fled the country, others that Eliza was working with the FBI. Seeking a semblance of normalcy, Eliza's parents finally arrived, escorted by building security through the back entrance. They embraced her, trying to provide comfort, but the tension was palpable. She made a few calls to her journalist acquaintance Sarah Blake, an old college friend who now worked for a reputable newspaper. Sarah agreed to meet discreetly at a nearby cafe that evening, away from paparazzi. Despite Joshua's reservations, Eliza slipped into a cab bundled in a coat and scarf, evading the cameras by using an underground parking exit. She clutched a folder containing printouts of the leaked documents, her heart pounding at the risk. At the cafe, Sarah greeted her with a tight hug. "I saw the news. Are you okay?" Eliza shrugged. "Not really, but there's something bigger happening here. I need your help verifying these files." Sarah's eyes widened as Eliza laid out the documents. She listened intently, scribbling notes. "This is huge, Eliza. If these are authentic, it implicates not just Hamilton Global, but major international players. You realize what kind of storm this could create?" Eliza exhaled. "Yes. That's why I need to be sure. My husband is missing. I believe he walked out because he discovered these unethical deals and his father was forcing his hand." Sarah nodded gravely. "I'll use my contacts to authenticate them. But once you light this fuse, there's no going back. Are you ready for that?" Eliza swallowed hard. "I'll do what it takes to protect Nick and to make sure the truth comes out." Back at the penthouse, Sarah's team worked around the clock, verifying codes, cross-checking email headers, contacting industry insiders who might confirm or deny the authenticity of the documents. By the next morning, Sarah sent Eliza a secure message. "These are real. We have multiple confirmations. The scandal could break wide open." That same morning, Eliza received a text from an unknown number. "Nick is safe. If you want to see him, come to 3445 West 57th St. Parking, Level B, at 11 p.m. Alone." Eliza's heart soared with hope. But fear soon crept in. Was this a trap? She read the text to Joshua. He frowned. "That's a secluded parking garage near the old Midtown offices. It could be a setup. But if it really is Nick..." Eliza thought of her baby, her love for Nick, and the vow she made to stand by him. "I'm going. I have to." At 10:45 p.m., Eliza discreetly left the penthouse, ignoring reporters clamoring at the front. She called an Uber, instructing the driver to drop her off a block away from the address. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. She arrived at the dimly lit parking garage. The guard at the booth barely looked up from his phone as she entered on foot. Rows of parked cars stretched into the shadows. A tall figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Eliza recognized him in an instant. Nick. She breathed, tears rushing to her eyes. He looked disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept. But he was there, alive, real. They rushed into each other's arms. For a moment, neither spoke, just clung to the other in desperate relief. Finally, Nick pulled back. "Eliza, I'm so sorry. I couldn't stay. I discovered things about the merger. Terrible illegal things. My father expects me to go along with it. When I refused, he threatened me. Threatened us." Eliza blinked back tears. I know. I've seen the documents. Nick, you should have told me. He sighed. I didn't want to drag you into this mess, but it looks like it's too late. She held his face in her hands. We're in this together. Whatever your father is planning, whatever Hamilton Global is doing, it can't continue. Nick nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I want to expose them. I want to do the right thing. But I'm afraid of what my father will do to you, to our child. Eliza's voice firmed. We won't hide. I've already reached out to a journalist. The story is being verified. Nick's eyes widened, a flicker of hope mixed with worry. If we go public, it could bring down everything. My family's empire, our fortune. We'll be targets. She squeezed his hand. I don't care about the money. I care about us, and about raising our child without a dark cloud of corruption hanging over our heads. Nick let out a shaky breath, pulling her into another embrace. Then we do it. Together. The wind howled through Manhattan's canyons like a warning, but inside the quiet offices of the Journal, the storm had already broken. Just before noon, the headline dropped Hamilton Global's secret network bribes shell companies and a family divided. The article was front page top fold. Sarah Blake's team had verified every line, every document Eliza had brought to her. Nick had provided further testimony, encrypted emails, files, internal communications that traced a web of corruption tied to Hamilton Global Holdings, foreign officials, and multinational banks. The proof was irrefutable, and the world took notice. Within hours, major news outlets picked up the story. Cable networks broke into regular programming. Stock tickers flashed red as Hamilton Global's valuation plunged by billions. Government agencies announced formal investigations. Social media erupted with hashtags like #HamiltonLeak and #LegacyExposed. In their penthouse, Nick and Eliza watched the coverage unfold. The same media that once fawned over them now told a different story, one not of glamour, but of integrity. Nick paced in front of the TV, running a hand through his hair. It's real now, he murmured. No going back. Eliza stood and took his hand, grounding him. That's the point. We don't go back, we go forward. That evening, Anderson Cooper aired a prime-time interview with Nick recorded under tight security. Nick didn't name names, but he confirmed the authenticity of the documents. He described the moral crossroads he had reached, the pressure from his father, the threats, the lies he could no longer abide. His voice shook only once when he said, I couldn't bring a child into this world while carrying that kind of darkness. Public reaction was immediate and powerful. Some called Nick a traitor to his legacy. Others hailed him as a whistleblower who dared to stand against corruption even when it meant turning on his own blood. But in the quiet corners of their home, as Eliza held his hand and rested her other on her belly, none of that mattered. They had chosen truth, and from that choice, a different kind of legacy was being born. The fallout from the exposé was swift and seismic. Overnight, Hamilton Global Holdings transformed from a symbol of financial prestige to a cautionary tale broadcast on every news outlet in America. The company's stock nosedived. Investors scrambled to distance themselves. Regulators opened investigations not only in the US, but across Europe and the Middle East. Nick's name, once synonymous with wealth and power, now floated through headlines alongside words like whistleblower, betrayal, and courage. The media dubbed it the collapse of the Hamilton dynasty. And still through the whirlwind, Eliza and Nick stood firm. They remained at their penthouse, declining interviews and offers for book deals. Eliza focused on her pregnancy, clinging to moments of calm between the waves of public attention. her doctor concerned by the stress-advised rest and limited media exposure. So Nick turned off the television, closed the laptop, and stayed by her side. "I'm not going to lose what matters most," he told her one night, rubbing gentle circles over her swollen belly. "The company's gone. My father's empire is crumbling. But you, and him, you're what I have now." Eliza reached for his hand. "You didn't lose anything worth keeping. You let go of something rotten. That takes strength." Despite the chaos, they were not entirely alone. Joshua Pierce remained a steady presence, helping Nick manage his remaining assets. While much of Nick's fortune was tangled in Hamilton Global stock, now nearly worthless, he still had enough in independent investments to keep them secure. Public sentiment began to shift. Where once there had been whispers of scandal, now there was respect. Eliza's dignity under pressure, Nick's decision to speak out, it resonated with people. They were no longer seen as symbols of elitism, but as humans who had chosen truth over comfort. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, one thing was clear. They had not only survived the storm, they had changed the weather. They had traded privilege for principle, power for purpose. And for the first time in their lives, they could look at themselves and each other with unwavering honesty. The new year dawned not with fireworks, but with subpoenas. Charles Hamilton III, once the towering patriarch of one of America's most respected financial dynasties, now found himself at the center of a high-stakes congressional investigation. The televised hearings transfixed the nation. It was rare to see a man of his stature questioned so publicly, his carefully constructed empire stripped bare under the scrutiny of lawmakers and regulators. In the Hamilton penthouse, Nick and Eliza watched the hearings unfold from their living room couch, their hands intertwined baby supplies, neatly stacked in the corner in preparation for the weeks ahead. Charles sat stiffly before the committee, his signature silk tie knotted with precision, but the calm confidence that once defined him had thinned into tension. Page after page of financial records and email transcripts were laid before him. Bribes, backdoor partnerships, misappropriated funds. With each revelation, the weight of decades of unchecked power bore down on him. For Nick, it was surreal. The man being interrogated was the same father who had taught him how to ride a bike, how to deliver a firm handshake, how to carry the Hamilton name with pride. But that pride had long since been eroded by secrets and manipulation. Eliza sensed his pain and rested her head on his shoulder. "You're not responsible for his choices," she said gently. "You made your own. That's what makes you different." Later that night, Nick's phone buzzed. Father the screen read. He hesitated, then answered. Charles's voice was subdued, laced with weariness. "You've destroyed everything I built," he said, more exhausted than angry. "No," Nick replied quietly. "You destroyed it the moment you decided your legacy mattered more than your integrity." A long silence followed. Then Charles whispered, "Take care of that child. Be better than I was." The line disconnected. Nick stared at the screen, his reflection barely visible in the darkened glass. Eliza moved closer, wrapping her arms around him. And in that quiet moment, the final thread between father and son fell away, not with rage, but with resignation. The old world was gone, and a new one, however uncertain, had begun. Winter still clung to the city, its snow-crusted sidewalks and steel-grey skies, a stark backdrop for what would become the most transformative day of Eliza and Nick's lives. It began quietly just after dawn. Eliza stirred in bed, a dull cramp spreading through her lower back. At first she thought it was nothing, just another ache in the long stretch of late pregnancy. But minutes later the discomfort returned, sharper this time, and closer together. Her breath caught. She placed a hand on her belly, now round and firm. "Not yet," she whispered. "It's too early." Nick, who had been dozing in a nearby armchair after a late-night phone call with a legal team, jolted awake when she called his name. "The baby's coming," she said, voice shaking but steady. Within minutes they were racing through Manhattan in a black SUV, sirens in the distance and headlights slicing through the misty morning. The world outside felt like it was holding its breath. For Nick, every red light felt like an eternity. For Eliza, time blurred as pain and anticipation mingled in waves. They arrived at the hospital just after sunrise. The nurses acted quickly, guiding Eliza through intake as Nick clutched her hand, whispering encouragement between clenched jaws. Labor was swift, too swift. The baby was coming a month early, and there was no time to prepare mentally or emotionally. It was raw and real. Eliza pushed through the fear, her thoughts fixed on the tiny life inside her. And then he arrived. Their son. Small, pink, wailing with strength that belied his early arrival. Nick's hands trembled as he cut the cord. Eliza sobbed quietly, not from pain, but from relief, from joy, from sheer disbelief that after everything, the scandal, the fear, the collapse of everything familiar, they had this. "He's perfect," Nick whispered, holding the baby to his chest. They named him Oliver, a symbol of peace, of hope, of a future rebuilt. In that moment, the cameras, the headlines, the weight of legacy, it all vanished. There was only this tiny child and two people who had fought like hell to give him a better world. And in that sterile hospital room, love reigned quietly, but completely. The months after the exposé were a blur of transition. What once defined Nick and Eliza's lives, boardrooms, fundraisers, headlines now felt like relics of a world they had left behind. The Hamilton name no longer graced the covers of financial magazines as a symbol of power, but it was still present, whispered now in conversations about justice, courage, and corporate accountability. Charles Hamilton III, once untouchable, stepped down from the board of Hamilton Global Holdings. The company entered a grueling period of restructuring overseen by federal investigators and new leadership appointed by court mandate. Several of Charles's closest associates faced indictments, and although he avoided prison time by cooperating and paying substantial fines, his reputation was shattered. Nick, newly divorced from the Hamilton empire, chose not to fight for his stake in the company. "Let them rebuild it without me," he told Eliza. "I want our future built on something real." And so they redirected their energy into something entirely new. With Eliza's background in non-profit legal work and Nick's connections and insight into business, the couple launched an organization focused on ethical entrepreneurship. They called it Clear Path, a foundation committed to promoting transparency, integrity, and accountability in business. Rather than chasing profit, their mission was to elevate the stories of whistleblowers, reform corporate culture, and empower future leaders to do better. Eliza also revived her long-held dream of investigative journalism. Through a podcast titled Inside the Veil, she interviewed corporate insiders, lawyers, and activists about corruption and reform. Her calm, empathetic interviewing style, paired with Nick's honest reflections, quickly built a dedicated audience. Though the Hamilton name no longer held its elite shine, it found something more valuable. Respect from communities that valued truth over titles. Nick and Eliza embraced a quieter life, selling off the opulent trappings of their past. The penthouse felt warmer now, not as a monument to wealth, but as a home where love, laughter, and the cries of baby Oliver echoed off the marble walls. They had weathered the storm, and now, beneath calmer skies, they were building something greater than legacy, something rooted in honesty, compassion, and each other. The first day of spring bathed Manhattan in golden light. After a long, relentless winter, both literal and emotional, Eliza finally felt the warmth return. On their balcony, overlooking the soft green of Central Park, Nick sat cradling their baby son Oliver against his chest. The boy slept peacefully, his tiny breaths syncing with the rhythm of his father's heartbeat. Eliza stepped outside quietly, her bare feet padding across the cool stone. She paused to take in the view. Her husband no longer the glossy heir to a billion-dollar empire, but something much more real, grounded human. She sat beside him, the city stretching before them like a promise. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly, her voice barely louder than the rustling leaves. "Blowing it all up. The company. The name." Nick didn't answer right away. He looked down at Oliver, then out toward the skyline he used to own. "I regret the way it happened," he said finally. "The pain it caused. The silence between us when I should have talked to you. But I don't regret doing the right thing. I needed to choose our future over my father's legacy." Eliza nodded, emotion swelling in her throat. "You chose truth over power," she whispered. "And somehow, through all of it, we still found each other." Nick turned to her, his eyes glinting in the morning light. "You gave me a reason to be brave," he said. "You and him." Oliver stirred, letting out a soft sigh. Eliza smiled and leaned into Nick's shoulder, wrapping an arm around both of them. Together they sat in a silence filled with meaning, the kind of silence that comes only after weathering a storm. They had lost nearly everything society once said mattered. But here in the heart of the city, with a baby in their arms and sunlight on their faces, they knew they had gained something far more enduring, an unbreakable bond. And that was everything. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster journey through betrayal, scandal, and redemption. Nicholas Hamilton's decision to walk away on Christmas Eve set off a chain reaction that not only tore down a corrupted dynasty, but also brought an unwavering love into sharper focus. In the end, courage and truth won out proof that even in a world where wealth and power often overshadow morality, integrity can light the way. If you found this story compelling and want to be part of our growing community, please like this video, share it with friends who love a good drama, and subscribe for more tales that explore the resilience of the human spirit. Your support keeps the conversation alive and helps us bring you even more thought-provoking stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter of real-life drama.
Welcome to our insightful and impressive story today. Millionaire invited his maid to birthday party, intention of humiliating her. But everyone's shocked in this gripping tale of unexpected outcomes. Join us as we uncover the story of a millionaire who invited her maid to a lavish birthday party with less than kind intentions. The millionaire, known for her extravagant lifestyle and opulent gatherings, decided to extend an invitation to her maid, not out of generosity, but as a scheme to publicly embarrass her. Unexpectedly, the maid's presence began to capture the attention of the guests for all the right reasons. Her genuine demeanor and authenticity contrasted starkly against the backdrop of ostentation. Guests started to engage with her, intrigued by her stories and charmed by her sincerity. The atmosphere began to shift as the partygoers found themselves drawn to her warmth and honesty. As the evening progressed, the guests' admiration for the maid grew, and the millionaire's scheme began to unravel. Inform us if you are enthusiastic about this narrative. If you are, press 1 if you found the video to be enjoyable. If this is not the case, press 0. Your comments are a great source of motivation for me to collect more stories that are uplifting and meaningful.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
In a world where money is everything, or at least, that's how it is for Emily, one of the most haughty rich girls in the city. Trust was elusive. Her life was measured by the digits in her bank account, her material possessions, and extravagant indulgences. The sunlight of the city poured over her vast mansion, an oasis of wealth amidst a sea of technology and excess. Emily, a 25-year-old heiress with an appearance polished down to the finest detail, stood in front of the large window in her bedroom. Her cold blue eyes, a contrast to her icy heart, surveyed the carefully tended landscape that stretched out before her. She wore a custom-tailored dress, worth far more than the annual salary of most employees, and on her wrist was a limited-edition gemstone bracelet, a symbol of time, which, to her, equated to money. With an aged glass of wine in her hand, because to Emily, even wine had to symbolize status, she watched her maid, Emma, diligently cleaning under the blazing sun, meticulously trimming every rose bush, cleaning every nook and cranny with a devotion that Emily found both strange and contemptible. Emma was everything Emily lacked: humble, hardworking, and genuinely happy with her simple life. And most notably, she was incredibly beautiful, no matter how simply she dressed, something that fueled Emily's envy and quiet disdain. At 30, the maid bore the weight of honest labor, with every drop of sweat on her pretty face reflecting the hardships of her life. Her skilled, professional hands wielded the tools with a finesse that could only come from years of practice and a love for her work. As Emily watched Emma at work, a dark idea began to form in her mind. A sly smile crept onto her face, revealing the malice hidden beneath the facade of a respected heiress. "Why not bring this country bumpkin to my birthday party?" she thought, savoring the words in her head. It would be amusing to turn her into the laughingstock of the night. Emily's birthday party was the biggest event of the year at her family's estate, where the most influential and wealthy children of the elite gathered to celebrate Emily's birthday and indulge their inflated egos. It was a parade of designer outfits, couture dresses, and jewelry that could feed a small nation for years. Emily was always the center of attention at these events, bragging amongst her friends, discussing plans for the next lavish adventure, or showing off her newest acquisitions, whether it be a rising star or a yacht bigger than her rivals. But this year, she thought, would be different. This year, she had an ace up her sleeve, a cruel joke that would elevate her above all the others in the sophisticated hierarchy of malice they all worshipped. Leaving her wine glass on the mahogany vanity, Emily stepped out of her bedroom and headed toward the garden. The heat slapped her face like a reminder of why she preferred the comfort of air conditioning. She approached Emma, who, upon seeing her, wiped the sweat from her brow with a dainty handkerchief. "Good afternoon, Miss Emily," Emma greeted her with a genuine smile that made Emily uncomfortable. How could anyone smile like that when their life was worth so little? "Emma, my dear friend," Emily began, blending her voice with a practiced warmth she had perfected over the years. "I've been watching your work, and I must say, I'm very impressed." Emma's eyes lit up with pride from the compliment, and Emily had to suppress the urge to cringe. "It's so easy to manipulate the simple-minded," she thought. "Thank you, Miss Emily, I always do my best to keep everything to your liking," Emma responded, the pride evident in her tone. Emily nodded, feigning approval. "And that is why, Emma, I want to give you something special, a reward for your hard work and dedication." Emma blinked in surprise. In all her years working for the Emily family, she had never received anything beyond her weekly paycheck and perhaps a small Christmas bonus. "A reward, miss?" she asked, curiosity evident. "Yes," Emily continued, savoring every word like she was sipping a fine wine. "As you know, every year, I have a birthday party. It's the biggest event of the year, where the wealthiest children from the nation's elite gather. Emma nodded, though it was clear she didn't truly know anything about this event. To her, parties and elite socialites were as distant as the moon. So this year, I want you to come with me, Emily declared, watching the shock and disbelief spread across the maid's face. Me, to a party? Emma stammered, clearly overwhelmed by the invitation. But miss, I don't know anyone there. I wouldn't know what to do or say at a place like that. Emily held back a laugh. The maid's insecurity was exactly what she was looking for. Don't worry, Emma. You'll be my guest of honor. Think of it as an opportunity to see how the other half lives. Besides, I'm sure everyone will be thrilled to meet the one who takes care of me and my home. Emma looked at her dirty, work-worn hands, then at her clothes, stained with the dust and grime of the garden. You're too kind, Miss Emily, but I have nothing appropriate to wear to such an event. Don't worry about that, Emily replied with a casual wave of her hand. I'll make sure you have something fitting for the occasion. So, what do you say, will you accept my invitation? There was a moment of hesitation, a brief flicker of doubt that seemed to tell Emma something wasn't quite right about this sudden generosity, but the emotion and the chance to experience something so far removed from her daily life quickly outweighed any suspicion. It would be an honor, Miss Emily, Emma finally answered, a radiant smile spreading across her wrinkled face. Thank you for thinking of me. The pleasure is mine, Emma, Emily responded, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder to seal the deal. The party is this Saturday, and I'll make sure you get everything you need. As she walked away, leaving Emma caught between excitement and worry, Emily finally allowed the malicious laughter she had been holding in to burst across her face. The game had begun, and she could already taste victory. Back in the cool comfort of her mansion, Emily headed straight for her private bar, needing another drink to celebrate the start of her perfect plan. While pouring herself another glass of wine, her mind raced, playing out every detail of the humiliation she was about to orchestrate. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. After a few seconds, a voice answered on the other end. Chloe, Emily said without bothering with a greeting. I need you to do something for me. I want you to find a dress for my maid. It has to stand out, and the less appropriate, the better. Make sure it's way too big. There was a moment of silence on the other end, as if Chloe, her personal assistant, was trying to make sense of the strange request. Of course, Miss Emily, Chloe finally replied. Do you have any preferences for color or style? Emily smiled to herself. Surprise me, Chloe, just make sure it's something that will have everyone staring for all the wrong reasons. She hung up without waiting for a response. Chloe would understand, she always did, which was why she was invaluable to Emily, capable of carrying out even the most bizarre tasks without asking inconvenient questions. With the plan now in motion, Emily allowed herself to imagine how the gala would unfold. She pictured Emma walking in, awkward and out of place, wearing a ridiculous outfit that would make her stand out like a sore thumb. She could see the confused stares, the stifled laughter, the whispered comments behind champagne glasses, and at the center of it all would be her, Emily, the architect of this cruel comedy. She would be the talk of the town for weeks, maybe even months. Do you remember when Emily brought her maid to the party, they would say, and everyone would laugh, admiring her boldness and cunning cruelty. But there was more at stake than just a mean-spirited prank. For Emily, this was a statement, a reminder to everyone at the party of who she truly was. Not just a wealthy heiress, but someone capable of manipulating, controlling, and crafting a spectacle at will. As she sipped her wine, Emily reflected on the path that had led her here. Born into wealth, her parents had climbed to the top of the business world through shrewdness, determination, and a total lack of ethics. Every step on her parents' way to the top had been marked by decisions that others might call ruthless or immoral, instilling in Emily the belief that cruelty was necessary for success. She recalled the stories her father had told her his first big break at just 26 when he hacked and stole the idea of a promising startup, presenting it as his own and securing the backing of key investors. The original founder, a bright but naive young man, was never able to prove the theft and ended up working in an electronics store, his dreams shattered. Then there was the hostile takeover of a family business that had existed for 3 generations. Emily's father, without a shred of remorse, dismantled the company and sold off its assets, leaving dozens of loyal employees jobless. The father of that family, who had built the business from nothing, had a heart attack upon hearing the news and died shortly after. Each victory, each $1 million accumulated, each headline in the business magazines was another step in building Emily's father's greed, convincing her that the more ruthless you were, the more successful you would be. And now, living in the pinnacle of success her father had built, with more money than she could spend in several lifetimes, what was left for her? The thrill of it all had long since faded. The designer goods, the trips, they had all become dull, almost tasteless, and most of all, she hated the beautiful face of Emma. That's why she needed this. This small act of cruelty, this elaborate joke at the expense of a simple, kind girl like Emma, was a reminder to herself and others that she could still cause a stir, create chaos simply for the fun of it. As these thoughts swirled in her mind, Emily moved back to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. In the garden, Emma continued working, completely unaware of the fate Emily had planned for her. For a brief moment, something like hesitation flickered in Emily's mind. Was all of this really necessary? What would she truly gain from humiliating someone who had always been kind and hardworking? But the feeling vanished as quickly as it had come. I hate people more beautiful than me, and Emily looked ahead with a dangerous face. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity at Emily's mansion. Chloe, true to her reputation for efficiency, had found the perfect outfit for Emma. A garish green dress, 2 sizes too big, with an absurdly puffed-out skirt. It was an outfit straight out of a bad stage performance, completely out of place at a glamorous party of elite socialites. When Chloe presented the dress to Emily, she couldn't help but laugh with satisfaction. "Great job," she said, inspecting the outfit with cruel delight. "This is exactly what I had in mind." The night of the party arrived, a night of light and glamour that seemed to illuminate the entire city. The hotel where the party was being held was a magnificent building perched on cliffs overlooking the ocean, transformed into an oasis of luxury and exclusivity. The entrance was adorned with massive floral arrangements and a red carpet that stretched on endlessly, guarded by security staff in black suits and earpieces, standing still as statues. Luxury cars and limited edition sports cars glided past the Grand Hotel, each one more impressive than the last. It was an endless parade of famous faces, friends of Emily's parents, then the children of those high-powered executives, arriving one after the other. Inside her Rolls-Royce, Emily adjusted the bow on her dress, a waiting smile on her lips. Next to her, Emma sat, clearly uncomfortable and out of place, squeezed into the garish green dress that Chloe had found. "Remember, Emma," Emily said with a fake sweetness. "Tonight, you're my special guest. Don't worry if you don't understand everything that's said, just smile and nod." Emma, her sweaty hands clenched on her knees, nodded nervously. "Thank you again for this opportunity, Miss Emily. I promise I won't let you down." Emily had to suppress a giggle. Emma didn't realize that the only way not to disappoint her was to become the joke of the night. The Rolls-Royce pulled up to the entrance, and a valet quickly opened the door. Emily stepped out first, greeting the photographers with a practiced smile as they immediately began snapping photos. Then, with a dramatic gesture, she extended her hand to help Emma out of the car. The moment Emma stepped out was exactly as Emily had envisioned. For a split second, the flashes paused, as if the photographers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then, with renewed enthusiasm, the cameras began clicking furiously. Emma, blinded by the flashes and clearly overwhelmed by the attention, stumbled slightly as she exited the car. Emily held her hand, a gesture that might have seemed friendly to those watching, but in reality, it was meant to further expose Emma to the cameras. "Miss Emily, who's your companion?" one of the reporters shouted. Emily smiled, savoring the moment. "This is Emma, my maid. I thought it would be fun to bring someone who really knows how to make things grow, don't you all agree?" Giggles and stifled laughter echoed around them. Emma, not understanding the true meaning behind Emily's words, smiled awkwardly at the cameras. As they walked the red carpet, Emily could feel the curious stares and amused glances following them. The celebrities, socialites, and famous faces of the elite world watched them with a mixture of confusion and obvious entertainment. Once inside the hotel's grand lobby, the contrast between Emma's world and the luxury of the event became even more apparent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over the guests who chatted casually, glasses of champagne in hand. The wealthy heiresses were adorned in designer gowns worth more than Emma's entire house, while the young heirs seemed to be in competition over who wore the most expensive watch or drove the most exclusive car. Emma stopped, clearly overwhelmed by the spectacle in front of her. "Miss Emily," she whispered. "I'm not sure I belong here." Emily suppressed a victorious smile. "Nonsense, Emma. You're my guest. Let me introduce you to some friends." With one hand on Emma's back, Emily guided her toward the table where her parents were seated with a group of high-powered executives near the bar. She recognized James, the CEO of one of the most promising startups, and Frank, a renowned venture capitalist known for his sharp tongue. "Emily," James called out, raising his glass in greeting. "We thought you were going to miss the party. And miss all this fun." "Never," Emily replied before turning to Emma. "Allow me to introduce my companion for the evening. This is Emma, my maid." The silence that followed was almost palpable. "Your maid?" Frank repeated, his tone a mix of disbelief and amusement. "Yes," Emily confirmed, relishing every second. "I thought it would be refreshing to bring someone truly interesting, if you know what I mean." The polite laughter that followed was forced and uncomfortable. Emma, sensing she was the center of a joke she didn't fully understand, smiled nervously. "Tell me, Emma," James said, clearly deciding to play along with Emily's joke. "What do you think of colonizing Mars?" Emma blinked in confusion. I don't know much about that, sir. But I suppose if they're going to colonize Mars, they'll need good maids, right?" Her answer elicited another round of laughter, this time more genuine but no less cruel. Emily could feel the curious stares and amusement directed at them from every corner of the room. Her plan was working perfectly. As the evening progressed, Emily made sure to introduce Emma to as many people as possible, each interaction more awkward than the last. She paraded Emma from group to group, from one conversation to the next, exposing Emma's lack of knowledge about technology, finance, and the culture of the guests. At one point, they encountered Esteban, who looked at Emma with a mix of curiosity and amusement. "So, Emma," Esteban said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What do you think the future of AI in domestic service will be?" Emma, sweating under the lights and the unwanted attention, stammered. Well, sir, I think if they can cook rice and serve it without spilling any, that'd be something." This response drew more laughter from the group surrounding them. Esteban, though clearly amused by the situation, seemed to consider her answer for a moment before nodding. "You know, that's not a bad idea. Perhaps we should explore automating cooking and serving on Mars." Emily, while finding the situation humorous, felt a slight pang of irritation. She didn't want Emma to receive any recognition, even if it was sarcastic. As the night wore on, the alcohol flowed freely, and inhibitions began to drop, the comments about Emma grew bolder, the laughter no longer hidden. Emily watched with delight as her plan unfolded, as Emma slowly wilted under the weight of the stares and remarks. At one point, Emma excused herself to go to the restroom. Emily watched her go, noticing how her shoulders slumped and her steps faltered. For a brief moment, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Had she gone too far? But before she could dwell on it, she was approached by a group of friends eager to chat, and Emily quickly lost herself in the conversation, temporarily forgetting about Emma's fate. Meanwhile, in the luxurious restroom of the hotel, Emma stared at herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back was that of a defeated woman. The bright lights highlighted every tear, every stain on her ill-fitting dress. For the first time that evening, she was alone, without the overpowering presence of Emily or the mocking stares of the other guests. Emma splashed water on her face, trying to regain her composure. What was she doing here? It was clear she didn't belong in this world of wealth and power. Every conversation, every glance, every stifled laugh reminded her that she was an intruder, a walking joke. As she dried her face with a towel softer than anything she had ever touched in her life, Emma considered her options. She could simply leave, catch a taxi, and return to the safety of her small home. But something inside her resisted that idea. She had promised Emily she would attend the party, and Emma was a woman of her word, no matter the circumstances. With a deep sigh, she stood up straight, adjusted the bow tie of her dress as best as she could, and prepared to return to the party. She might not belong here, but at the very least, she could face the rest of the evening with dignity. While Emma struggled with her insecurities in the restroom, Emily was in her element, surrounded by the powerful and famous friends she adored. She commanded the conversations with the skill of a refined heiress, each word, each gesture, each smile calculated for maximum effect. "Emily," a voice called from behind her. "I must say, your choice of a companion tonight is quite interesting." Emily turned to face her father's biggest rival in the tech world, Paul. Paul was everything Emily's parents despised: intelligent, charming, and worst of all, genuinely loved by his employees and colleagues. "Uncle Paul," Emily replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Always a pleasure to see you. What can I say? I enjoy surprising people." Paul looked at her with an unreadable expression. "Is that what you're doing? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're humiliating a girl who clearly doesn't understand why she's here." Emily's smile wavered for a moment. "Don't be dramatic, Uncle Paul. I'm simply showing Emma a world she would never see without me. Isn't that generous?" "Generous," Paul repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Is that what you call it? Because to me, this looks like an exercise in unnecessary cruelty." Before Emily could respond, a murmur spread across the room. All heads turned toward the main entrance to the ballroom, where an impressive figure had just appeared. He was a tall man, around 75 years old, with silver-streaked hair slicked back and a presence that exuded authority. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, not ostentatious, but radiating wealth in every stitch. But the most striking feature was his face. His sharp eyes seemed to see through every lie, and his smile blended kindness and shrewdness in perfect harmony. Emily felt her mouth go dry. She knew who the man was. Everyone in the country knew him. It was Alfred, the legendary investor and philanthropist who had made and broken more fortunes than anyone in the history of tech. He was the one man even the industry's titans bowed to, and he was heading straight toward them. "Paul, my boy," Alfred said in a voice that was friendly but undeniably commanding. "It's good to see you again. How's that clean energy project you told me about coming along?" Paul, clearly delighted to have Alfred's attention, eagerly launched into an enthusiastic explanation of the latest advancements in solar technology. Emily, feeling temporarily sidelined, prepared to interject when she noticed Alfred's gaze had shifted to her. "And you must be Emily," Alfred said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." Emily shook his hand, trying to hide her nerves behind a confident facade. "Mr. Alfred, it's an honor. I hope everything you've heard is positive." Alfred smiled, but something in his eyes made Emily feel as though she were being scrutinized under a microscope. "Oh, I've heard all sorts of things. You're certainly a remarkable figure, Emily, there's no denying that. Although I must say, your choice of companion tonight is quite notable. At that moment, as if summoned by Alfred's words, Emma stepped out from the crowd. Her face still bore traces of having been freshly washed, and there was a new resolve in her expression, as if she had made a difficult decision. The moment Emily had been waiting for all night had finally arrived. With Emma back in the ballroom and Alfred watching with interest, the stage was set for the grand finale of the cruel joke she had orchestrated. "Mr. Alfred," Emily said with a smile that barely concealed her malice. "Allow me to introduce my special guest for the evening. This is Emma, my maid." The silence that followed was almost absolute. Even the background music seemed to fade, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Alfred looked Emma up and down, his expression unreadable. Emma, for her part, stood as tall as she could in her ill-fitting dress, facing the gaze of the legendary investor who was a friend of Emily's parents, and the amused stares of Emily's young elite friends, with a mix of anxiety and determination. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. Alfred smiled. It wasn't the thin, sarcastic smile Emily had expected, but a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Emma," Alfred said, extending his hand. "It is an honor to finally meet you." Confusion spread across Emily's face like an ink stain. Finally. What did he mean by that? Emma, equally surprised, shook his hand. "The honor is mine, Mr. Alfred," she replied, her voice stronger than it had been earlier in the night. And then, as if signaled by Alfred's words, something extraordinary began to happen. Like a wave spreading across the ocean, the guests began to stand, one by one, then in groups, until the entire room was on its feet. Applause erupted, starting softly but quickly building into a deafening roar. Emily looked around, stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening. "That's her," someone in the crowd shouted. "The unknown angel. I can't believe it. She's a legend." Whispers spread quickly. "The unknown angel. Is she really here? I can't believe it. She's a legend." Emily turned to Emma, her face a mix of confusion and rising horror. "What are they talking about? What is this?" But Emma was no longer looking at Emily. Her eyes were focused on Alfred, who nodded slightly, as if granting permission. Emma took a deep breath and, for the first time that night, stood completely tall. Suddenly, the ill-fitting, garish outfit seemed irrelevant. There was a dignity in her posture, a strength in her gaze that Emily had never seen before. "I think it's time for the truth to be revealed," Emma said, her voice clear and resolute. "Yes, I am the unknown angel." The revelation hit the room like a clap of thunder. Emily felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The unknown angel. The mysterious philanthropist who had donated millions to charities in secret for years, whose identity had been the subject of speculation across every social circle in the country. But you're a maid?" Emily stammered, unable to reconcile the humble image of Emma with the legend of the unknown angel. Emma smiled, a smile full of years of secrets and satisfaction. "Yes, I am a maid, and I'm proud of it," she replied. Then Alfred stepped forward onto the stage, taking hold of the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, a few years ago, Emma was one of the top young entrepreneurs in our country, named among the top 5. However, for reasons unknown, she decided to step away from that life and live simply, doing what she loves." Alfred moved toward Emma, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I've had the privilege of working with Emma on many charitable projects over the years. Her generosity and humility are truly inspiring." Emily felt her world spinning. Her plan, her cruel joke, had crumbled in an instant. Worse still, she had become the laughingstock, the villain of the story. The guests began flocking to Emma, eager to meet the legendary unknown angel. Executives, stars, and philanthropists who had looked at Emma with disdain hours earlier were now competing for her attention. Ms. Marion, a famous actress said, "Your donation saved the arts center in my hometown. I cannot thank you enough. Emma, a renowned tech entrepreneur, added. The funds you provided for clean energy research are game-changing. It's an honor to finally meet you. As the compliments and gratitude continued, Emily found herself retreating, shrinking away from the spotlight. Her mind raced, trying to process what was happening. How could she have been so wrong? How could she not have known? Emma, for her part, accepted the thanks with grace and humility. The real honor is in helping, she said repeatedly. Each of us has the power to make a difference, no matter our place in life. At one point, Emma turned to Emily, who had withdrawn into a corner of the room. With steady steps, she approached her once proud employer, now small in the face of the revelation. Emily, Emma said, her voice gentle but firm. I suppose you're wondering why I accepted to come tonight, knowing your intentions. Emily, unable to meet Emma's gaze, looked down at the floor. I don't understand. Why work as a maid if you have so much money? Why put up with all of this? She gestured vaguely to the party and, more broadly, to the way she had treated her. Emma smiled, a smile filled with empathy and sadness. Because honest work, Emily, no matter what it is, has dignity. Because caring for you and your home, seeing things improve every day, keeps me grounded in what truly matters. And because sometimes, the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places. Emily felt something crack inside her. Her whole life, her entire upbringing, her parents had taught her that money and power were all that mattered. And now, here was Emma, a woman with more wealth than Emily could ever dream of, choosing to live a simple life and quietly do good. I'm sorry, Emily mumbled, the words difficult to get out. I didn't mean to. Emma placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, a gesture of understanding that Emily felt she didn't deserve. I know, Emily. And while I can't condone your actions tonight, I think there's a lesson here for all of us. She turned to the crowd around them, her voice rising so that everyone could hear. Tonight reminds us that we should not judge people by appearances or their profession. True wealth is not measured in dollars but in the positive impact we can make in the lives of others. A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Emily could see the eyes that had once admired her now turning cold or filled with pity. She had fallen from her pedestal, and the fall was steep. Alfred stepped closer, his presence always commanding. Emily, his voice a mix of disappointment and a sliver of hope. You made a grave mistake tonight. But as Emma pointed out, there is always room for growth and redemption. Emily nodded, feeling smaller than she ever had before. We cannot change the past, Emily. But we can plant the seeds for a better future, Alfred continued. And you don't have to do it alone. There is a community here willing to help, guide, and work with your family on projects that truly matter. Emily looked at him, feeling a mixture of humility and hope that she had never experienced before. I want that. To learn, to help, to do things differently. Emma smiled brightly. So, what do you say if we start tomorrow morning in your house as I suggested? There's something truly therapeutic about cleaning and seeing your efforts, quite literally. I would love that, Emma. I think I have a lot to learn from you, from everyone, she added. As they spoke, Emma made her way to the balcony. Her presence, once overlooked or mocked, now radiated quiet authority. Ladies and gentlemen, Emma said with a gentle smile. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Paul replied, making room for her to join them. Emily, still grappling with her shame, could hardly meet Emma's eyes. Emma, I don't know what to say. Emma placed her hand on Emily's shoulder again, the same gesture of understanding. Sometimes, Emily, there's no need to say anything. What matters is what we do from here on out. The group stood in silence for a moment, gazing out at the starry sky. As the gala ended, the guests left with a new perspective. The story of the unknown angel, the millionaire maid who had spent her career quietly helping others, would spread like wildfire in the days to come, inspiring others to reconsider their priorities and the true meaning of success. Emily, who had planned her birthday party with the intention of humiliating her beautiful maid, left with a lesson in humility and a newfound purpose in life. That night, Emily sat down with her parents, and they talked for hours. Her parents, filled with regret for having raised her with such negative values, expressed their remorse. Together, they vowed to change, to strive to help the community, rather than merely satisfy their own selfish ambitions. The next morning, as promised, Emily showed up ready to work alongside Emma. As they cleaned the house, Emily understood that they weren't just caring for a home, they were refreshing their lives and embracing transformation. Along with it came the promise of change for their entire community. The story of the wealthy heiress and her maid would become a legend in the country, a reminder that true wealth is not measured in dollars but in the positive impact we can have on the lives of others.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.